So I figured I'd jump on here and check in with Barry since we got another week or so before Heather's second prediction fails. And so while we're waiting on that, let's see what Barry from March of 2020 had to say.
These people, I find it funny. There's Peter Schiff and some other guys that are, they're what I would call, they're called gold bugs in my business a little bit. If you think about stock markets, and they're always saying, "Oh, okay." They've been saying this for a decade. See, what's going to happen is the stock market's going to crash, and then the value of gold's going to explode. So you want to buy a bunch of gold and put it in your safe. That cracks me up.
Let's take a moment and let's see how that's aging so far. All right, so here we are at the S&P 500, and if we measure from the top down, we are down almost 21%. Currently down almost 14%. Let's move on over to the NASDAQ real fast. We got a double top, measured from there, and down 25%. Currently down 17.5%. Dow Jones, another double top, down 19% or so, currently down about 13%. Now let's take a look at gold, shall we? Wait, what did he say was going to happen?
See, what's going to happen is the stock market's going to crash, and then the value of gold's going to explode.
So right about here is where I made the video suggesting the merits for buying silver, and also explained, because I can't give financial advice, that I was planning on buying up some gold. And this is the area where I was actually telling people, hey, might want to think about moving out of the stock market and into precious metals. But again, I can't give financial advice. But if you happen to follow my example, well, you would be up currently 75%. And this morning it actually hits head on $3,500 an ounce, so that'd be 80%. So here's my point in this. Paul tells us to earnestly covet the gift of prophecy. That if you've got God's Spirit within you, then God will be able to lead you and take care of you just by obeying the things that he tells you to do. In this particular situation, who appears to have a better understanding of what was going to take place in the future? Is it Barry, the person that claims to be a Christian that thinks that owning precious metals is stupid? Or is it Peter Schiff, who, this is a secular example. It's not like he's saying, "Thus saith the Lord," and I don't know why God always prophesies in Old English, but we won't get into that. The thing is, it's like, here it's playing out. And the thing is, I've seen all this stuff too, and I knew that Barry was going to be wrong. Matter of fact, I've grabbed a bunch of clips from him saying things back in like 2020 that I knew were not going to age well. And I'll probably bring those up in time when they are relevant. But the thing is, I kept that clip because, well, I guess I'm in that gold bug club. Because after all, I made that video in November of 23 saying, hey, this is what I plan to do. Now, my focus over the years has been silver because it's drastically undervalued. And that now that gold is performing, it's even more undervalued. After all, there's a ratio that it comes out of the ground, and that ratio is not reflected in its price. So the thing is, silver will catch up because a lot of people can't own this. I mean, you consider this morning sometime, this was worth $3,500. And I understand people like, that's a very little piece of metal for a lot of Benjamins. But the thing is, if you're serving God, there should be a supernatural presence in your life. And that's one of the things over the years that even unbelievers have noticed in my life. And I get called lucky occasionally because of it. But the thing is, there are things that I have done, especially lately, that are just unwise. But I felt like they were the right thing to do. I mean, buying this house was one of them. I had no intention of ever buying a house after the strategic foreclosure that I did on my last house. And then one of my coworkers said, hey, that house is up for sale. You should buy it. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't think so. And so I came in And I turned on the faucet in the bathroom and I flushed the toilet and I looked to see if the pressure dropped and it didn't. And I was like, okay, I'll put an offer on the house. Now, let me tell you how unwise this was at that moment in time. This was like April of 2019 or so. And I still hadn't got my top secret clearance. It had been a couple of years at this point, and I still have not seen it. And the thing is, as long as they're investigating, I can work for the places that I was working for. But the problem was the moment they come back and they say, no, we can't give you the clearance, well, my job is over. And so I don't need to be nailed down into a mortgage. Well, but I felt like it was the right thing to do. Again, conventional wisdom, foolish. I had even changed my phone number to a 775 number, changing my area code from my Nashville number, which was 615. Because I'm like, this is home. It'll work out. No big deal. And 6 months later, I got an email, and I was like, oh, man. And my coworker's like, what? I said, you're really going to expect something out of me now. And he's like, why? What's going on? And I was just like, I've got my clearance. So it all worked out. It's just, you got to live your life by faith. And that's the only thing that pleases God. I think a lot of people forget that. And that's also why I don't do the timeline thing, because I think that's a lack of faith. If you're going over here and you're doing calculations and putting all this kind of stuff together to find something which God says is hidden, the idioms that I've shown people, it's the day that no man knows the day or the hour. It is the hidden day. And somehow I'm supposed to believe that some knucklehead that got, valedictorian in high school, that's the person God has led into this adventure to figure it out when his hidden day is. No, I'm not ever anybody that ever comes up with a date for the rapture. I'm just going to be like, that's probably not the date for the rapture. So anyway, that aside, I just think it's just a lack of faith. Why aren't you just living your life by faith? This is how I do it. I'm not trying to figure out when the rapture is going to take place, because it's not something that's necessary. I just do the next thing that God tells me to do. That particular situation, buying it when God told me to stock up on these little yellow discs, well, a few months later, I felt like I needed to quit my job. And then, but I've got to have an income. I've got to eat. I got bills and all that kind of stuff. And I'm watching my savings go down, and I was getting a little depressed, because I'm just like, what am I going to do? Because this is going to run out pretty soon. And then I go around and I'm looking at the price of gold, and I see where I bought it, and I see where it's at now, and I'm like, oh. God has preserved me through this time of, I won't even say unemployment. I just say, at this point, I'm probably just retired. I mean, because let's just be honest. I sit around and play solitaire. I have to do the daily so that I know what day it is. I wake up and I'll turn on the charts and everything like that. I'm like, nothing's moving. Why isn't anything moving? Oh, it's Saturday. They're not trading on it. So the thing is, just learn to trust God. And I think if people spent less time listening to people like Barry and more time listening to God, then they wouldn't be concerned about when the rapture is, because God is leading them through this world. Not that you're not going to deal with hardship or anything like that. I've been through a lot of stuff where, as people ask me, oh, wait a minute, you got children? I'm like, yeah, I hadn't seen them in 13 years at this point. There's things that I have hope for, but we'll see. I don't have a word on it one way or the other. I just have hope in that department. And then there's other places where I know that I've got God's word, and the fact is, he does it because he wants you to trust in him. So I guess that's really all I'm saying. And also understand, one of the things that people have done over the course of the nearly 25 years I've been serving God is they'll say something like, hey, will you please pray for me? And I have to remind them, there's no mediator between you and God other than Yeshua. I am nowhere in that hierarchy whatsoever. I may be more mature, being that I've been serving God for nearly 25 years, but that doesn't mean that I'm any better at hearing God's voice. Matter of fact, when I was really young in the Lord, his voice was much louder back then, or the dreams were much more vivid back then. I can't tell you the last time I actually had a prophetic dream. It'd probably been 15 years ago that I felt like God's showing me something that's going to take place. It's not, but it was a lot of that happened really as a young Christian. as opposed to where I am now. And so that doesn't mean anything, especially when people, when I told them sort of how I ended up at the church and all that kind of stuff, they're just like, wow, I remember when, I could hear God's voice like just loud and clear. And then over time, it just becomes that still small voice. And that's the thing is, you should have your relationship with God that should not involve some of these knuckleheads that are out here on YouTube telling you, oh, this is what I think is going to take place. No, probably not. Matter of fact, they have a pretty good track record of being wrong. And so I guess if that's your cup of tea, I guess you go for it. So I guess until the tribulation starts here in the next week or so, since the goalposts were moved, well, I guess we'll see what happens. Nothing's going to happen. It'll just be the most lamest tribulation ever.
Yeah, you want to chalk up all the times Barry's been wrong? That's fine. You can put a Barry wrong chart up here.
So before I forget, definitely check out this video. This is done by Candace is my name. I don't, the N in your name messes with my dyslexia, so if I mispronounced your name, I'm sorry, but until I hear it, I'm assuming it's Candace. Anyway, not the point. I'll leave a link in the description to this, but this is basically, the title of it is a deep dive on the Heather dumpster fire, and it's a little over an hour long, but it's worth it, and she basically touches on all the points that I would have touched upon. So instead of me making this video, I'll just send you to her video and get to know her channel. Anyway, later.